Star Wars 7x7, episode 1977. Oh my gosh, what an interesting number that turns out to be. One of the amazing side benefits of getting up to an episode number this high is that we have somehow matched the year that Star Wars came out. And I've got a couple of thoughts about another great theme in Star Wars that I thought we would talk about today on this sort of special occasion. Punch it! Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. So I want to say thank you first off to Fred Butler, who is a patron of the show, who a couple of months ago suggested this idea, noting the fact that we were going to be coming up to episodes 1977, 1980, 1983, etc., and that it might be interesting to talk about each of the movies on the episode that correlated with the year of their release. He's not the only one who said it. A few other folks have mentioned it since then. Thank you very much for everybody who's chimed in with that suggestion. And yeah, I've decided that I'm going to follow it. So thank you very much. And from a certain point of view, so to speak, Star Wars is really an interesting family story, and not, just the Skywalker stuff, because when you consider the fact that when A New Hope came out in 1977, all we knew was that Luke Skywalker had a father who was killed by some guy named Darth Vader. But beyond that, we didn't know anything that was really going on behind the scenes. And yeah, you can, get into the whole discussion of whether Lucas had really understood that himself or whether the changes were made later. That's all some good, fun stuff for discussion. But I'm going to look at it from the perspective of A New Hope starting out, because that's of course the order in which the movies were released. And yes, Lucasfilm can tell us that we should start watching from episode 1, but there is still a significant chunk of the Star Wars viewing population whose experience started with episode 4, and so we're going to look at it from that perspective. Seen from that angle, Star Wars, aka A New Hope, is as much about hope and as much about this galactic conflict as it is about people from broken families coming together, and broken in various ways. I mean, you have Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is, as far as we know, the last of the Jedi Knights, so his entire order was wiped out in the Clone Wars, and he has been alone in the desert. He is a hermit. He has no family, and additionally, he was taken away from, his birth family, because that's what happens with Jedi. So not only did he, lose his family of origin, but he also lost the family that he grew up with, and now he, is alone. You have Luke Skywalker, who didn't know his mother or father, who is an orphan, who has been raised with his aunt and uncle, and whose aunt and uncle are killed in the midst of the story. In fact, comparatively early on in the story. And now, deprived of the family that was holding him back, he tells Obi-Wan that he wants to go with him, but crucially, he says, I want to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi like my father. So he is still yearning for a familial connection, and that's how he frames his next decision. It's not just to go to the academy, which is what he had initially wanted to do, right? That was what he had been lobbying his uncle and aunt for, and, eventually find a way to the Rebel Alliance from there. No, instead, he wants to go with Obi-Wan on some damn fool old idealistic crusade. Yeah, another situation entirely. And then they get to the Cantina in Mos Eisley and meet up with Han Solo and Chewbacca. So you have Han Solo, who is a scoundrel, a rogue, a loner, and has no family that we know of. And obviously you can look back into Solo: A Star Wars Story and make some interpretations there, but for all intents and purposes, this is a guy who seems to be off living his own best life with his buddy Chewbacca. And we know from Chewbacca that he has family and has been in a very long and committed relationship too. But the two of them seem to be the only family they have when we meet them in the Cantina in Mos Eisley. So they are, a rather unique and interesting pair. They are business partners, but beyond that, we have no idea what their personal lives are whatsoever. And then we have the final crucial player in our story, in our group of heroes. That would be Princess Leia Organa, who was sent on a mission by her father to get Obi-Wan Kenobi, but her mission has unfortunately failed. And now she's being held captive and being grilled for information about the rebel base. And to get her to confess, they threaten her entire planet, which is her family and, billions more, and kill them all. So she immediately becomes an orphan in the midst of this motion picture. So now she is also without a family. So we have all of our main characters have no family with whom they're connected, and waving Darth Vader out of this one, right? So fate, or maybe more accurately, the Force, brings these people together, and it seems like what's very interesting about these people not having families is that they all still have a very strong desire to bond with other people. You can even say that about Obi-Wan Kenobi. You can even say that about Han Solo. But what does this all have to do with that classic movie with Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock and Dennis Hopper, Speed? Well, I'll explain that after the break. Stay tuned. Hey Rebel Rouser, I've made some changes to the asteroid belt level at patreon.com/SW7X7, and they are all with sponsors in mind. So if you want to get the word out about your business, your product, your service to a dedicated Star Wars audience, then please check out patreon.com/SW7X7 and look for the asteroid belt level for details. Again, that's patreon.com/SW7X7. Welcome back. So there's a line in the middle of the movie Speed where Sandra Bullock says that relationships that start under intense circumstances never last. And of course, Speed came out about 17 years after A New Hope. So that was already disproven at that point, because if ever there was a situation where characters came together under intense circumstances and had relationships, well, yeah, that would be it for sure. But, the relationship, I would say, between Han and Leia lasted, a good, 20, 30 years or so? So, yeah, I'd say that ended up working out okay. And even if you looked at it from just a familial relationship, well, I think all of those worked out pretty strongly too. And I think the difference in this case has to do with the fact that all of their trajectories were kind of the same. Like, they were all interested in the same thing, or at least Luke and Leia certainly were, and Han seemed to come around. Chewbacca, I think, was already predisposed in this direction, and, historically so too. So the fact that, they all had this intense relationship, but it was all with, a shared vision and purpose, and that it seemed to be a shared vision and purpose that aligned forward as well, is what I think ultimately cemented the relationship. And because of the fact that, it couldn't all be romance and flowers and whatnot, then certainly friends and family became part of the situation instead. So yeah, family forged in a very hot fire is what basically A New Hope is about from a certain point of view. And that is going to do it at this different look at A New Hope on the occasion of this being episode 1977. And that's going to do it for this episode of the show entirely. Thank you so much for joining me for it, as always. And may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
This podcast is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox. It is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other related Star Wars items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2019 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.